The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows over the empty desert highway. The sky bled a molten orange, and the wind carried the dry, gritty breath of the Mojave. A small town, forgotten by time and law, stood like a stubborn relic among the sand. Rusty pickup trucks, a flickering motel sign, and at the center of it all, Rose's Diner, where the coffee was stale but the silence was worse. Dear listeners, before we move forward, please subscribe my channel to hit 1,000 figure. The bell above the diner door gave a lazy jingle as he walked in. Dust clung to the cuffs of his weathered jeans. His boots were scuffed from miles of hard road. The wide brim of his hat cast a shadow over a face carved from stone. Clint Eastwood, the kind of man who didn't need an introduction, only a reason. He took the last booth in the corner, back against the wall. The waitress, a nervous girl named Jenny, barely looked him in the eye as she poured him a cup of black coffee. "You're not from around here," she said, more statement than question. "No," Clint replied, his voice low and slow, "but I figured this place might have something warm before sundown." Jenny hesitated. Her hand trembled slightly as she set the pot down. "You should go, before night hits." He raised an eyebrow, sipping the bitter brew. "That a warning?" She looked out the window to the dirt road that stretched toward the hills. "That's survival." Outside, the sky was slipping into dusk, and with it came whispers, the kind that make shutters close and lights dim. Word was spreading. The hollow vultures were riding in. A gang of desert raiders who didn't steal for money. They stole for sport, for the kill. And Clint? He just kept drinking his coffee. By the time night swallowed the sun, the town had already gone dark. No sirens, no law, it's just the growing growl of engines in the distance, and one man waiting for them in a booth by the window. He didn't come looking for trouble, but trouble had just found the wrong man. Midnight came heavy. The diner lights flickered like they were scared of the dark, and outside, the desert seemed to hold its breath. Then, like a slow roll of thunder, the first engines growled in the distance. Dust kicked up on the edge of town, swirling into the headlights of approaching bikes and trucks. The hollow vultures had arrived. Inside Rose's Diner, Jenny locked the front door with shaking hands. Clint sat unmoved, his coffee now cold. His hat tilted just enough to hide his eyes, but not the calm readiness in his jaw. "You don't get it," Jenny said, her voice barely a whisper. "These aren't just outlaws. They're butchers. The sheriff left months ago. No one's coming." Clint stood, slow and deliberate. "I'm not waiting on anyone." He walked toward the jukebox in the corner, the floor creaking under his boots. With a flick of a coin, the machine crackled to life, filling the diner with a dusty old tune, something twangy and slow. A strange calm spread, like the kind right before a storm. Then came the knock, heavy, ugly. A voice followed, hoarse and full of poison. "We know who's inside. Send out the cowboy and maybe we let the girl live." Jenny's face went pale. Clint didn't flinch. Instead, he calmly walked over to the counter, opened a napkin dispenser, and pulled out a small pouch. Inside were 6 custom bullets, hand-carved notches on each, like scars that told stories. He placed them beside his revolver on the table. Jenny watched him, wide-eyed. "You only brought 6?" Clint looked at her, then toward the door. "I don't plan on missin'." Outside, boots hit dirt. The vultures spread out, circling the diner. Snipers on rooftops. One of them, a lanky, grinning bastard named Duke, stepped forward, spinning a machete in one hand, shotgun slung in the other. Inside, Clint took a deep breath. Every sound was sharp. every movement deliberate, because by sunrise this diner would be a graveyard, and he'd already picked his spot. The seconds crawled like wounded animals. Outside, boots shuffled, gunmetal clinked, and low laughter echoed through the night air, the kind of laughter that knew death wasn't far behind. The hollow vultures weren't just here to rob, they were here to make a statement. And Clint Eastwood, he was about to write his reply in lead. The door shook under another bang. Duke's voice came louder this time, laced with menace and mockery. "Cowboy, you got 1 minute before we light this place up like the 4th of July." Inside, Jenny crouched behind the counter, tears slipping down her cheeks as she tried to hold her breath. Her fingers dug into the edge of the wood, knuckles white, heart pounding. Clint stood still, back to the door, his revolver on the table beside the 6 bullets. His silence was louder than any scream. Then, without a word, he moved. He turned to the door and unlatched the lock, slow enough that the sound of each metal click felt like thunder. The wind rushed in as the door creaked open. He didn't step outside, just stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the buzzing neon light overhead and the endless black behind him. "Didn't think you'd have the guts," Duke snarled, stepping closer. Clint didn't answer. His eyes scanned the shadows. One on the roof to the right, another behind the truck, 2 in the alley. He didn't just see them, he measured them, their distance, their stance, the slight twitch in their fingers. And then, like lightning from a clear sky, he drew. The sound split the silence like the crack of doom. The sniper on the rooftop went down hard, his rifle clattering across shingles before disappearing over the edge. The vultures scattered, shouting and firing wildly. Glass shattered, bullets tore through the diner's walls, and Jenny screamed as she ducked. But Clint was already moving, stepping out of the doorway and into the chaos, each step a death sentence waiting to be signed. He fired again, quick, precise, and without mercy. Another man fell, clutching his throat, gurgling in the sand. The others hesitated, confused. He wasn't hiding, he wasn't running, he was hunting. Duke ducked behind a barrel, cursing, "You got 2 left, cowboy. That gun only holds 6. Inside the diner, Jenny peeked over the counter, her eyes wide in disbelief. Clint had already taken down 2 with just 2 shots. No hesitation, no wasted movement. The man didn't just carry a gun, he became it. From the shadows, a third figure lunged with a blade, hoping to catch Clint from behind. But the revolver spun like magic in his hand. Bang! The third body hit the dirt, eyes still open in shock. 3 down, 3 left. And the only sound now was the wind dragging dust through town like a ghost with unfinished business. Clint stood still, revolver smoking. And then, calm as ever, he muttered into the silence. 3 more, and a long night ahead. The desert had gone quiet again. That dangerous, deceitful quiet right before all hell breaks loose. 3 men down, 3 left, and Clint Eastwood stood in the middle of it like death with a steady heartbeat. Smoke curled lazily from the barrel of his revolver. He reached back inside the diner, eyes never leaving the darkness, and with the gentlest touch, reloaded 3 more rounds from the napkin pouch. Jenny watched him from behind the counter. Every move burned into her memory like an old Western reel she never thought she'd live through. Outside, Duke seethed behind cover. "You son of a bitch," he spat. "You think this is some game? You don't know who you're messing with." Clint didn't flinch, didn't speak. Instead, he started walking, slow, steady, like a man crossing a church aisle toward a sermon no one wants to hear. His boots crunched on broken glass and dirt, eyes fixed on the glow of Duke's cigar. Another shot rang out from the far left. One of the vultures tried flanking him from behind a rusted pickup, but Clint had already turned before the trigger was even pulled. Bang! Fourth body down. The bullet caught the man right between the eyes, sending him into the side of the truck like a marionette with its strings cut. Two left. And now, panic began to seep into the vultures like water through cracks in a dam. They weren't hunting anymore. They were being hunted by one man who hadn't even broken a sweat. Duke called out again, desperation creeping into his voice. "We'll cut a deal. You walk out now, you live. We take the town, you keep the girl. Fair?" Clint paused. His eyes narrowed just slightly, enough for the wind to feel uneasy. He holstered his revolver and stepped into the middle of the street. For a second, even the night seemed confused. Duke and the last two vultures peeked out from cover, trying to process what they were seeing. He was unarmed now, standing out in the open, hands at his sides. Clint spoke, calm, cold, clear. "You boys love the odds, don't you?" Duke stepped out first, shotgun aimed squarely at Clint's chest. The other followed, twitching nervously, a semi-automatic in his grip. "You really think this ends with you walking away?" Duke asked, sneering. "No," Clint said, eyes steady. "It ends with me watching the sun rise. You just ain't figured out where you'll be lying when it happens." The words had barely left his lips when his right hand moved like lightning. 2 shots, 2 bodies. The second man hit the dirt hard, his weapon tumbling into the sand. Duke stumbled backward, the shotgun falling from his grip as he clutched his shoulder, screaming. Clint walked toward him, slow and relentless, the same way storms roll in. "You talk too much," he said, stopping just a few feet away. Duke reached for his boot knife, desperate. The 6th shot echoed into the night like a church bell. And then, silence. Duke's body collapsed, face down, blood soaking into the desert floor. Clint stood over him, smoke drifting from the barrel of his revolver. 6 shots, 6 bodies, and the stars above the diner blinked down like cold witnesses to a justice no court could ever deliver. The sky was beginning to bleed blue. A soft crack of light peeled across the horizon, burning through the long night like the truth breaking through a lie. The town, silent just moments ago, began to stir with the uneasy whisper of wind and the metallic scent of blood. Clint Eastwood stood alone in the street, a silhouette carved in iron. Around him, 6 bodies lay scattered like fallen dominoes, their lifeless shapes framed by the soft gold of dawn. Jenny stepped outside, barefoot on the cold diner tiles, clutching a dish towel like it was a holy relic. Her eyes scanned the aftermath, unsure if this was real or a dream born of terror. "You're hurt?" she asked, her voice like breaking glass. Clint turned his head slightly, just enough to acknowledge her. A single scratch down his cheek, a red line glinting in the sunrise. "Nothing that won't fade," he said. Jenny stepped forward, tears forming again, but not from fear this time, from something else, something between awe and relief. "You saved us. You saved me." Clint looked back toward the diner, the bullet holes in the walls, the broken jukebox still humming a final note. The town was cracked and bruised, but it was standing. "That wasn't for savin'," he said, looking at the sun now climbing above the hills. "That was just settling a score with the night." Behind him, the sheriff's station remained boarded up. The motel sign still flickered, but people were waking up. A curtain moved. A door creaked. Life, fragile, stubborn life, was finding its way back. Jenny stood beside him now, her voice gentler than before. You're not staying, are you?" "No," Clint replied, eyes still on the road ahead. "This town's got its peace. I've still got dust to walk through." She reached into her apron and pulled something out. A small metal star, old and tarnished. "If you ever come back," she said, placing it in his hand, "maybe we'll nail this back on the sheriff's door." Clint looked down at the badge, then slipped it into his coat pocket. "Maybe." He turned, walked toward the horizon where the road met the morning. His boots tapped out a rhythm in the sand, slow, steady, and final. No fanfare, no applause. Just the sun rising over a town that remembered what justice looked like, 6 shots at a time. And the man who brought it.